There are a range of video cameras made by National or Panasonic that take VHS tapes, and they start with the NV-M1. This is the Japanese market version, McCloud movie, and this doesn't have autofocus. It's got controls under that cover there. The viewfinder flips out, and there's a few more things down there. Fairly basic VHS camera. That's the NV-M1. Then there's NV-M3, this one here, which they add autofocus to it, this part down the bottom, which doesn't exist on the other one. That more or less everything else is the same. Flip out viewfinder, VHS tape, same controls. This isn't a Japanese one, it's an English model, PAL standard. Then from the NV-M3, next one is the M5. Things change a bit. It's now a CCD image sensor rather than a tube. The viewfinder arrangement is a bit different there. The battery is also different. M1 and 2, the battery is this shape and it goes onto the back. But from M5 onwards, the battery is this shape and it slides into a slot in the back of the camera. The controls have been put into this part, and play record is selected by moving this cover over, whereas before you don't have that, you just put it into record to record. Shape is a bit different. Moving on from M5, there is M7, which is fairly similar to the M5 model. Same arrangement with the viewfinder, more or less the same controls there, same controls here. Now there's a cover over these additional controls, otherwise pretty similar. I think they added a flying erase head. That seems to be the difference between those two. From M7 there's then M10, 12, 15, 21, a whole bunch of other models. But beyond M7, the enclosure of them starts getting weirdly rounded and big, which is quite bizarre because it's gone from this, which is the shape perfectly fits the stuff inside it, to these that have become slightly rounded, to all the way up to M40 and M50, which I have an M40, although I don't have I've got the guts of it, where it's just a small bit of stuff inside, and then the plastic casing is this huge big rounded thing around it. I'm not sure what the deal is with that. It seems that they could have made it a lot more compact, and I guess it's a market driven thing, make it look as big and ugly as possible to sell more. Anyway, what we're going to do today, and put these M5s and 7s out of the way, those will be a subject of another video. What we're looking at now is what is the difference internally between the M1 and the M3. I have at least 4 of these, and some of them have already been taken apart, so we won't need to dismantle this. This is the only M1 that I have, so we're going to take this one apart and see what's inside it. Then I have noticed that in Japan, the NV-M3 is a CCD camera, with this part here doesn't exist, it goes flat. So we're going to have to explore one of those in a future video, and I think it's a bit strange that they've chosen the same model number. In the US series of these cameras, which starts with AG100 for this one, this is the AG150, and the CCD version is AG155. The M5 model is AG either 200 or 300, and then there's a 350, and so on. So it's the same thing, just with different model numbers. Let's take a look at the accessories that come with these cameras. The battery, the connection to it, one of the few connections you can make, is this multi-pin. That's a remote pause. This is the AC adapter DC input, but also a video input and output port. You can get this thing, a line adapter, which plugs into there, and then gives you a audio and video input, which allows you to use this as a general purpose VCR by just hitting record and recording what goes into there, and that is automatically enabled when you plug in there. There's some sort of switch. I don't know if that works on the M1 model, but this is from the M3 model. For the M5, they've changed that slightly. M5 still has that same plug there, but use this adapter now, where you can leave this plugged in and then you can choose whether you're recording from the camera or the line input. And that might use another contact on that, maybe? I don't know, well, it's got remote there, but then it mirrors that out. So, I don't know, who knows how that works. I suspect this one doesn't support the video input because it doesn't have those extra pins loaded, which this one has, which are not loaded there, but are on this side and are in there. So the AC adapter has got this cord on it. The AC adapter that comes with the camera looks like this, and it's got the AC input and the camera connector, and then you can turn that on and off, and then there's an RF selector there, so you can join this in series with your TV aerial and your TV, and then choose whether the camera's RF output is enabled or not. And then there's the video outputs. So to get the video and audio out of this camera, you have to plug this in and use this terminal. Then to charge the battery, it goes on there like that, or you can use this thing. Well, I guess that's a standard accessory, I'm not sure. It clips onto the bottom of the battery like that. Hard to know which way around that goes. It's got a little peg thing there which goes into that slot like that, and then there's a plug there, an output for charging the battery. I guess that lets you charge two in parallel. I don't know, never had any batteries of these that work because they're so old. Wow, a long time ago I had one that worked, but don't have any that work now. And similarly on the M5 models, don't have that side mounting battery since they've got the long thin batteries. So instead, to charge the battery, you got to use this clip onto there. I'm not doing a very good job at demonstrating these. That squeezes onto the battery, and then again that plugs into there. But also the M5, M7 onwards, you can charge the battery in the camera, which you couldn't do on the M1s and M3 models. Now this one here, the Japanese one for the M1 camera, that doesn't work. I plugged it in, nothing happens. Will it prove me wrong? No, it's just dead. So perhaps we'll investigate that and see what the deal is. Because you can't get audio and video out of the camera directly, they give you this little adapter thing with it, so that allows you to get it out. I've also got here an official national branded cable. They call it a national high quality cord, which is quite nice. High quality. That's an interesting one too, because it's got a doubled up audio channel there, and the video. They've made the cable properly with the thinner ones for the audio and a thicker core for the video. This must be a proper 75 ohm video cable there, and then that goes into stereo, so it will just mimic both channels on the output. All proper national branded, made in Japan, printed on there. Pretty nice. So that's how you can get the audio out without using the AC adapter. Inside this box, it is a composite to S-video converter, because the camera's native recording format is an S-video signal. So the two pins there are for luma and chroma separate. So that's a chroma separator type thing. And presumably that's what's in here. When we do the M5 teardown, perhaps we'll look inside this as well. The thing you get is a car battery cable. So you can plug this into your cigarette lighter in your car, and then that will power the camera. with that and let you get the video and audio out as well. And you see the PAL regions, they use B and C connectors for the video, as the NTSC regions just use RCA plugs for video. Now you also get a earphone, small earphone thing, so you can monitor the audio, and that connects up. There's a microphone in and an earphone there. There you go, that's all the good bits and pieces you get with the camera. Let's take a look at what is inside the NV-M3 camera. We don't need to take this one apart because I already have the bits out of one. You can see the controls there, the eject button there. So this is the tape mechanism, and then the main power and video board for the tape mechanism there. And then in this gap here is where the camera section goes, which is this tube there for the camera. And then all this bits here is the power supply and video processing for the camera, all on one board. And all you need to do, that goes to the viewfinder, which is here. That goes to the microphone. That's the power and standby controls. That's the record trigger and record review trigger. That's the power to the autofocus board, which is this standalone board at the bottom here, which handles all the autofocus. And there's autofocus enable switch there. So the only other plug is this one, and that's all it takes. Joins onto there, and that brings power, sync, and the video back from the camera section. So that connects on there. And then that just sits in there, and yeah, that squishes down into there, screws into place, and there's a whole camcorder, a camera and recorder in one. Unfortunately, this has seen better days. It's got a lot of corrosion forming there from the capacitors leaking. It's a bit disappointing. This here is a remnant of the first ever camera that I owned, which was an M3. It was quite well used, beaten up one, and I've kept this part. Also from the original M3 that I owned, the first camera I ever owned, this is the mechanism that's been fully stripped down so that it can be investigated to see how it works. It's got the half-sized video head on it, so they put two sets of heads that switch halfway between the track and spin this twice as fast. And the wrap is almost completely around. A more compact VHS mechanism by making the head smaller. Doesn't save that much space, it has a reasonable amount of space. Audio circuitry goes in this area here. So the audio circuit is in here, stacked up in these modules, and then video stuff is here. I think I said video was on here before. Pretty sure this is only servo power type stuff. Might have some video things on it. Can't remember exactly, but there's a lot of video processing on that board there on the bottom. There's a microphone connector comes out of there. Do we try turning this on? I have got another one. This is the camera part that came off of this one here, and it's got on it one of the service aids, which is an extender for the camera section, so you can run the camera separated out from the mechanism for servicing. Let's power this up and see if it brings us any joy. Plug it in the adapter, and then the power switch is here. It might be in standby. There we go. Oh, I got that wrong. Oh, there we go, the zoom works, so that's must be on. Now if we look, so we can see what the camera sees. Dark, but there you go, there's the camera working, and we should be able to put a tape into this. If you hold down stop, then it won't go into record mode, otherwise it defaults into record mode. Because I don't have the trigger wired up, I can't actually get it to record, but we can try playing it. And we can try. thought this was in working order. Yeah, sort of. Thought it was a bit better than that. It might be the HDMI converter is unhappy with the video signal, but yeah, it does play okay, and presumably records okay as well. Okay, let's try out the other camera. We unplug this cable, put this one away. This one here has seen better days. Let's plug that in and see what it does. I remember it is very green, as what can happen with some of these tube cameras. I also learned my lesson: do not plug in or unplug the viewfinder while the camera is turned on, because it burns out something on this board, and yeah, it's the end after that. Wow, I didn't know where to start in trying to investigate what its problem was. So yeah, don't unplug the viewfinder while it's powered up. When the viewfinder is plugged in, you then get the on-screen display, which you can turn on and off, and there's a light mentioned there. How do I hold this without? Oh yeah, look at that. It's nice and green picture. It might come right after a while. That should be white balance set, but yeah, it's green. It was kind of green back when I was able to use it as a camera, but yeah, it's deteriorated quite a bit since then. Suppose people would like that for their retro music video shoots. There you go, that's the M3. Let's turn on the M1 and see what it's got to say for itself. I've not turned that on before. Excitement waiting for the video. Just wondering if I can smell the capacitor leaking out of this thing. Anyway, let's try the M1. Get this turned off and put away. Okay, we're going to plug in the M1 for the first time and see what it does. Okay, made the right turning on noise. Eject. Oh, look at that, a picture is coming. Okay, well, it looks like it works, doesn't it? Let's just set the white balance according to this. See, they give you this white view lens cap, so you can put that on and then hold the white balance set button to set the white balance. Yeah, it doesn't have very good. There's a little tiny button there to engage the macro function. Alright. Well, let's see if this can play. This is a tape. I don't really care if it gets destroyed, but it's also, this is an NTSC machine, so this tape, if it does play, will be a bit weird looking. Oh, it goes into record mode whether you like it or not. Alright then, well, let's record a bit. Oh, it looks like the clock thing doesn't work. Yeah, seems like the tape is stuck in there. Yeah, that's a shame. Yeah, see, it's not moving at all, and yet it's trying to move it. Well, I guess we now have a reason to open the camera. Okay, it's got a slipping belt. Alright, let's take apart this camera and see if we can rescue the tape. Alright, we're going to take apart an NV-M1. Now, the procedure for taking these apart, I've done it many times, is to try and remember where all the screws go, because there are a lot of them. And they're all different. So that eject button there that clips into the sides, and then that reveals another screw, and then the cold shoe, whatever it is, that slides off, and that reveals a bunch of screws under that. And when you release that, that will slide off, and then that reveals some screws under there, and then one on the front, and then that should release the viewfinder. It should lift up and unclip. There's also a ground wire there that undoes, so now we can unplug the viewfinder. And then that reveals a screw that can undo the microphone, and another screw that undoes this side panel. And then the microphone can be released, I think. Oh, that comes a little bit later. There's some more screws down here. Now we've got a whole bunch of screws on the back, and then the back panel should be released. And then that will reveal more screws under that, I think. At least one screw. It's all very similar to the M3. Now that slides out. And yep, there's one more screw down there. And there's a bunch of screws on the bottom. There'll be one on this side there. Now we look on the bottom. There's another one there. Is that different to an M3? No, there's one there. Now, got 4 screws on the bottom. And then there's some screws up this side part here. Oh, the camera area. Oh, that's longer. Now that's tricky. Now this part should lift off. Let's see. Not sure if something is happening with the microphone though. Something is attached up here. There mustn't be any screws for that. No, it's just clipped on. Okay. Look at that. Similar-ish. Now in order to open the other side, you have to take the cassette loading door off. And that's done by picking out these little bungs. And that reveals some screws. The problem is we might not be able to get this off without ejecting it. Let's see. Oh, it does lift up enough. Okay, and then this plastic frame can come off. Yes, I'm going to unplug the remote pause connector and also the standby and power switch connector switch thing. Now we can see it fairly similar to the M3. Pull the microphone off. Get that out of the way, stop it flashing around. That reminds me, there's a significant downgrade in the M5 and onwards. See, this microphone is used on the M1 and M3, which is good. The foam thing has disintegrated and disappeared, but it was removable. It connects on there. Whereas on the M5 and onwards, the foam part is integrated and can't be removed, so it's just flaked off and made a massive mess down there. It's not very nice. Back in the older versions, you could just remove it. Now let's see, how do we get the camera part apart? You might not need to get it apart. This is always a tricky bit in the M3 camera. It clips in there, which needs to be released. And then that can come out. There's probably a correct procedure for doing it, which doesn't mess it up. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's holding it. Some special holding thing that I can't see. There aren't any more screws. I think you have to get that off to undo the camera part, because there's some screws down there that hold the chassis together. I think the key is releasing something that's in there. No. Oh, that's annoying. Ah, there is a screw under there. It's hidden by the strap. And what does that do? Ah, look, there you go. Ah, you got to undo a screw. Okay, now we can carry on. So we see the same wire that we looked at before, which is responsible for this record review and the VTR trigger. That's that one there. There's also this ground wire. We'll pull that off, because that will stay behind. That goes into there, into this part. And there's this ground wire to remember that that goes back on there. We'll keep the screw there. Yes, this is different to the M3 in that there's a hidden screw under the strap. I've not come across that before. That's real sneaky there. We almost wrecked this thing trying to get that apart. That's loose. I don't think that's from me trying to get it off though. But now we can access the screws that are down here. We'll do these little tiny ones first, which hold the board in position. Red, so you know that those are removable for servicing. And then there's several down here. 1, 2, 3, which hold the camera section onto the VCR section. And then finally this one down here. Just looking at this to see how it goes together. So this plastic sheet goes over everything, but then around those cables. Ah, look at that. Got the same sort of deal, just one connector. I wonder how similar that is. Well, it's got a part number on it. VEQ0404, VEQ0352. I suppose it's not surprising that it's different. The layout of that board looks the same, doesn't it? Same 4 chips there. And on this side, pretty similar. Not completely the same. Something's different there. That thing is different. There's a heatsink around that device, which that isn't on there. And there's extra shielding there, which they don't have on that one. There's no focus. That's the autofocus select, manual auto, I think. No, that's not true. Oh, that's auto white balance. Auto manual white balance, which isn't on here. I think it's just manual. You have to push that button to do the white balance. Oh no, there's no... Ah, yeah, there's no auto white balance on this camera. It doesn't have the color sensor there. Okay, so as well as not being autofocus, it's also not auto white balance. I wonder if that's interchangeable between the M1 and M3. I wonder if that cable was the same. Might be. Do you think I should try it? Maybe not yet. Let's fold this board out and take a look at the back of the mechanism. And then we've got to try and get the tape out. Oops, there's another screw there. Now that we've got the back off, we can unplug the battery terminal board thing on there. Little power input board there with a fuse on it. A dusty mechanism. Now we can see the loading mechanism, and we should be able to... Oh, so the tape has spooled back in. Okay, maybe it's not that bad after all. Maybe it's that belt there and the loading. It does feel a little bit loose, but not terrible. I don't think that's really a problem. Maybe we can just power this up as like this and try it out. So we should try that for fun. We put back the eject button just so that it doesn't blow away and accidentally short out on something. And we've got to get the power switch mechanism thing. Oh, that's a complicated assembly. Oh, maybe I could have just clipped it off and keep those bits together. Don't lose track of it all. So the power switch off that cable there. Oh, the viewfinder cable was routed differently. That's the microphone. Yeah, it goes along the top in the newer one. So this must go to there, a long cable. Okay, let's plug this in and see what happens. Oh, it's the capstan drive is jammed somehow. Huh. Weird. I wonder what's jamming that. It's very jammed. Okay. Does that mean the brake is not being released on the tape? Don't know why that's jammed, but it did kind of make the right turning on noise just then. Plug the camera back in. I wanted to see if it would actually enter into recording mode. Yeah, that's dodgy enough. It seems like you can't stop it and just go into play mode on this camera. Put on the picture. Oh look, that's making sense now. The white, whereas before it was just a blurry mess. Maybe that was because the strain of that motor not. Something's jammed. Oh, I don't know what is that? Why does it get jammed at that point there? So it's supposedly... Okay. Alright then, it's going to need some work before it will do anything. Let's investigate the mechanism. What I'm going to do is inspect this very carefully, and we might swap the belts from this other one onto the M1 mechanism, since it seems to have quite slippy belts and the ones on this might be in better shape. We'll take a look. There are red screws which you can use for removing the cassette loading mechanism. Get that out of the way. We'll take that off first. Try not to lose track of all these screws. Probably like a lot of things, this will get dismantled and then it will just stay like that, sitting around for a couple of months before I get around to putting it back together. I think the problem is once you get this off, then there's all sorts of wiring going to the end sensors that then gets in the way and doesn't easily disconnect. I think there's only one more over here. Yeah, it pops up because I've manually moved the mechanism around to the eject position, as normally it will wind itself back a little bit so that it will latch when you close the lid. Okay, there was a fourth screw hiding down in that corner. Okay. I wonder if it's good to just leave that sitting up there, and if you can turn it on while it's like that and get it to do its business. That's an approved servicing thing that you can do. It seemed to have some issue that there was a brake turned on when there shouldn't be, because it was getting real stuck. But I don't know what that would be. Compare the mechanism between the M3 and the M1. They're probably the same. The way that all these different little bits and pieces go together. That thing for the pinch roller. Probably check that. Doesn't look too bad. It's a bit oily. Maybe that's because of my fingers. Have a look at the one from the M3, which might be a better condition pinch roller. Really need to clean this stuff a bit. The capstan's also got some crust on it, which is the usual sort of thing that you find. Fairly clean in here, but a little bit dusty, where dust has been able to get in through the cassette opening, or the cracks around the cassette door. So just give this stuff a little bit of a wipe just for fun. On the audio head there, the erase head over here, the back tension arm, tape guides. That little cover thing can come off. Guess what? Oh, there's a screw back there. One thing's interesting, the erase head on the M3, it had a circuit board sticking up from it which accidentally got snapped off when it was resting upside down, whereas that one, it's got an angled part, so you wouldn't have that problem. Actually, I'm disappointed about that because there's otherwise nothing wrong with this mechanism. But yeah, that snapped off. Should we try powering this up like this? Just for fun? I don't know if that's a good idea. Let's do it anyway. Oh, it's trying to eject, is it? It knows there's something wrong. Because it's looking for light to shine in the end sensor, isn't it? Yeah. Alright, entered play mode, okay. Does that mean if we put a tape on there, it would actually play it, or attempt to play it? Let's try to do something. There's a switch somewhere. Oh, it's that, isn't it there? Okay, it's something. I think the belts still need sorting out, don't they? Looking on the back, there are a few differences seen between this M3 mechanism and the earlier M1. The dew sensor, which is here, used to be just on the other side of that, and the little board that is here is now up here, which joins the mode switch, the dew sensor, and a few other things. That which is probably the IR emitter for the end sensors. Yeah, so that's moved. There's a real sensor there, yeah, which used to be part of that board. Now it's, well, was a separate board, now part of that board. And then the signal to that is a ribbon, which is a ribbon cable on the newer one, was this manually wired thing here. So that was a ribbon cable that went up to about here, but now maybe it's the one with the red on it. The wire's a bit different. So what we want to do is try and change these belts. They're not that easy to get at them because there's these plastic covers. Okay. And then the other one, the loading motor belt, that we had to take this gear off in order to access it. It's got a tiny little split washer on there. It's a split washer without a split. Okay, there you go. Lift that off. Then we can take this belt out with clean fingers. And get grease all over it. And then just give that a little bit of a wipe to sort of wake it up a bit. And you see it's holding the shape that it was in for the last 25 years. How long has it been since I had this in a camera that I used? Probably 20 something years. When did I get the camera? 96, 97 maybe? And it was old at that point because these cameras are from the sort of mid 80s-ish. They're doing well to work at all. Okay, well let's see if we can get these belts off then. Do the same, get this guard off. All these wires in the way. I wonder if that would be better, hopefully. Try and put this back where it was. LED emitter thing. Now we got the other one to deal with. And again, there's a plastic cover that needs to be removed, but it's got wires going through it. So the wires going up to the control panel, I think. Yeah, on this plastic bracket thing. And the other one here. Split washer without a split on it. It just gets popped off. Weird. The old belts aren't that bad. We need to clean the wheels so that they don't look dirty. Yeah, it's not very good. I'm gonna try and clean the pulleys. Who knows if that will make any difference. I think there's some proper chemicals you can get for making belts work again. Some rejuvenating stuff. Yeah, if we clean them with isopropyl alcohol, they usually work a bit for a little while. Enough to prove a point, perhaps. Seems a bit grippier now. Pull out this little washer thing. Some sorts of hair and stuff stuck under it. Alright then, I wonder if that's helped anything. Guess we should try it out now. See if it's more good or not. I think this might be working. It's just belt slipping. I'm going to try a tape with NTSC on it. But I want to clean the heads first. Can we do that without taking it apart? I don't really want to put a good tape in there and have it destroyed straight away. I'm gonna have to unopen this thing. Sure, cleaning it with the power on is a good idea. Let's got a little bit of stuff off of it. Is there any other bits and pieces we need to clean while we're in there? Just give the other tape guides a bit of a wipe down. Oh, that's right, the capstan is pretty gross. I'll try and clean that. Okay, I think what we should do is connect up the camera so that it can actually record and play something. Because I don't really want to... This camera doesn't seem to have the ability to insert a tape but not start recording, which is quite annoying. So I really want to just play a tape, but I'm not sure how to do that. Maybe I've got to pick the record prevention tab out of it. Anyway, let's try and hook up this stuff. Enough stuff that we can power it up. Where's the switch? Over here. So we've got something awesome there to try and record. We've got to be really careful because it's got major issues with belt slippage. So what's going on now? I don't know what its problem is. Okay, so it's happy now. I think it's just slightly misaligned because I didn't put all the screws in. Okay. Yeah, I actually got it to go in. I don't know why it wasn't letting the tape in before. But now, look, the tape counter is going. And there's an awesome scene in front of the lens, which is good. The edge of the monitor. Not an Apple computer. I suppose it's a good idea to not get that in focus too much. So let's see if we pause the recording and push review. Wow, look at that. Played it back. I think now we can press either stop or... Okay, now it's gone back to what was previously on the tape, which it can't play clearly because it's a PAL recording and this is an NTSC machine. I want to get a different tape in, but I don't know how to load the tape without it starting to record onto it. Maybe what we need to do is remove a race prevention sensor. No, we can't get to that easily, unfortunately. It's mounted in from the other side. I'll try and work out what to do to make it not record over anything. Oh, I think you just push record, okay. That's it, and it will go into play mode. Just exercise this mechanism a bit. Okay, that's good. So you just push record and then it will go into play mode. Not particularly obvious, is it? It seems to have loosened itself up now, which is nice. So let's try this tape. And all we have to do is push play or record. There you go. There you go, look at that, it's playing back video. That came from a Laserdisc. At some unknown time, a long time ago. So it looks like now this has had a bit of exercise. It's loosened itself up a bit and it's now willing to work. Is good. Maybe it's time to put it back together. Oh, we're having a little bit more of a study at the difference between the M1 and the M3 mechanisms. The fast wind forward works. Let's see it better down the viewfinder. That doesn't break up. I need a... It's like a... I don't know what you can do to make these analog signals capture better without getting disrupted. And it goes in the backwards. The fast wind is not very fast. The rewind's a bit better. Great! Working VCR mechanism now without really doing much. I'm not sure that replacing those belts actually changed much. I suppose it would have a bit, but it just randomly started working. So before it appeared that the reels were jamming. I guess that's just because the loading belt was slipping, so it wasn't in the right position where the brakes are off on the reels. I assume. Doesn't really make much sense why it would just work now, having not worked before earlier. Seems most likely that it was that, just belt slipping, nothing else. So there you go, very good. So it all appears to work now, but I bet if we put it all back together, put all the casing back on, and then tried to load a tape into it, it would get stuck and refuse to eject it. That seems to be the way these cameras work. They'll act all good and working, and then as soon as you put them back together, they'll stop working. It just seems to be the way it is. That EF thing on the top of the screen there above the counter is the battery level, empty and full. So when those dots go away, and if you see that happening when it's running on the AC adapter, you notice the capacitors in the AC adapter are a bit bad, or possibly in here, and so it means the power supply rail's sagging. Seems to be okay. Keeps on working. So whatever fiddling around we did with belts and the like seems to have made it happy again. Let's have a look how the viewfinders differ between the M1 and the M3. The size is different. M3 has a larger viewfinder. The M3 viewfinder can extend, in case your eyes are closing together perhaps, whereas the M1 does not have that ability. Let's take them apart, see what happens, and maybe while we're in there we can sort that out, which is not staying shut. This one also has an adjustment for your different eye prescription thing, whereas that does not. Quite well screwed together, wasn't it? Not sure why we're not allowed to look at this. A lot of thread engagement there. Not sure why it needs so much. We probably have to take this whole thing apart. Problem here is going to be, do we have to take that off by unbolting it? Probably. Yeah, looks like it. That has to unscrew, but that can't unscrew because of this. Well, now they got that on, there must be some tool. Why doesn't it focus on anything? I wonder what its problem is. Oh, there's a lot of stuff to undo here. Oh, there's a ball. Okay. Ah, that goes into there. The detent ball. Oh, and there's also that. Oh, which goes in there in a slot. Okay, so I think we have to take that apart the other direction. Yeah, I think we've got it completely upside down, unfortunately. So you're going to take these screws right out and then flip it up. Then lift this off. Oh, look at that, nice and packed in there. Okay, shall we see? Oh no, there's some thread locking stuff on there. Oh, okay, but it unscrews easily. I wonder if the connection the same. Looks like it could be. Oh, and now there's a circle up there. Okay, but we don't need to undo it. Okay, now there's 3 screws here. Okay. Now, is this the same way you gotta tip it over? In which case, maybe that piece should be put in there. Oh, did we have to undo those other screws here? Ah, there's a lot to undo in this. Again, yeah, it's supposed to open the other way up. Otherwise, it's becoming a mess. Okay, 2 viewfinders are open, and the guts in them look very similar. So it's 2 boards. I wonder if those transformers are the same. They are. Interesting. The flyback transformer there, and then it's got the smaller board, which I think that's got the decoding chip on it. I wonder what's holding that in. See, it's got that chip there, 2510S. The same on that one. So I think the insides of the viewfinder are the same. Oh, there's the tubes. That's KY1010M. KY1010M. Looks like it's the same. Same little LED thing there to like tele indicator. Alright, viewfinders are the same. And also quite tricky to assemble and disassemble. That hasn't gone into its track. Does it have a track? There you go, viewfinders. Very similar internals but slightly different housings. The newer one has the ability to slide out. Took apart more of the camera by taking the housing stuff off. You can see the lens is pretty simple. There's a motor there with a gearbox on it for the powered zoom, and then there's the little servo thing there for the iris, and that's it for motors and things because the focus is completely manual. There's a little transformer there for the high voltage for the tube, comes around there, it connects in the back there, and then there's the other bits and pieces for the deflection. Deflection might be those ones. Yeah, deflection's there. Oh no, that's the output signal there. So deflection is that one, which goes into a little opening there. The deflection coils will be in there. This one, then the target on the front of the tube comes off and it's in this box. There must be a little preamp, and then the signal comes out of that and goes around and goes up to there, I think. There, that's where the video comes in. Very good. I think we should put this all back together now. A lot of stuff to put back together. I'll just put these bits back onto the lens assembly. I'm wondering if I've missed... Yeah, so that screw there holds other stuff. There's a little hole there, which is part of that same screw. That's for the manual iris and the white balance set. Good, that's that piece back in place. This part here has to stay off until later because we need it to join back onto there. Maybe we can do that now. Except we need to get this viewfinder stuff out of the way and put back together the viewfinders first. Maybe it was up the right way before. Yeah. Yeah, because there's slots in this side which aren't in this side. Is it the opposite? No. So I've just got that backwards for some reason. We'll just have to see if this stuff will slot together. The problem is everything needs to slot together for that to work. And it looks like nothing wants to slot together, so anyway, we're going to tip it over and then try and get everything in position. I don't know why it came apart better on the other way around. Okay, there's the first bit done. There's so much threads there to get in, and because it's just into plastic. Try to go back into the original thread by backing it in. It's still pretty stiff though. Okay, that thing back in again. Then something's not lining up. Okay, it seems to be lined up. And there's this bayonetting on thing there. That seems to be in the right position. There's a bunch of screws. The problem seems to be this thread is on both halves, so you can't really get them. Well, it means that they're already in the thread. Okay. There's a little connector board thing. And this little screw. There's a large nut. Oh, that's real stiff. Maybe probably got the little grommety thing in there around the wrong way. Oh well, that will just be like that from now on. Now we got the other one. And what we wanted to do with that, make that work better. It needs to be bent a little bit more in that direction. Let's see if that changes it. Not quite, but it doesn't hold it out now. I think it just needs to be, yeah, overall bent as well. Kind of works. Yeah, but what about that? That came out. Which way around did that go? That's the thing that holds the mirror, isn't it? That way, I guess? Seems to be. Anyway, all the slots are on this side, not this side. So I don't think it's gonna want to go together very well, is it? Well, it's not gonna want to go together easily. Okay, it went together. And got these super long screws. Would bite the whole way. Yeah, it's not good because of that the thread hasn't engaged very well. Okay, now we got to work out what to do with this stuff. It needs to go like that, I think. So that's up. Normal, hidden. That seems to be okay. I don't know why the viewfinder folds up on the cameras, so you can have it sticking up. There's still a screw needing to put in there. Okay, that's good. Now there's a little circuit board holder screw. Now let's have a look at attaching the camera back onto the VCR mechanism part. Got some screws to put back, and that also holds down these plastic strips that keep all the wires nice. That's good. Now that trigger cable came out there. All these other ones are just rammed down the bottom, and then the camera board goes under this stuff. Okay, that seems to be going in fairly without a fight. Okay, let's try and put this screw in. Another one down here. Then we've got the two little ones that hold the top edges of the board. Great, the first bit of the camera is mounted back. Oh, this plastic strip is still unhappy. Okay, that's good. Oh, we'll leave that on because we need to test it. Before we put it back together completely, we'll try it out again. We'll put back this hand grip part with that hidden screw that took a long time to find. It's nice that they color code the wires where it could be a case of not knowing which one goes where. So there's a red one, and this one here is 3 core, so it can't get mixed up. Now there's that ground wire. Now this somehow clips on. Oh yes, there's a little slot there that it clicks into, and a slot there. Oh, it goes on real easy when you know what it needs to do. Oh, you've got to put the ground on before you put this thing on. Start again. Okay, we can put in some screws on the bottom now because we've got enough stuff in. Oh yeah, I remember now one of these takes that long screw, but there isn't really any way of knowing what one that is. Alright, should we test this again before we put the final bits and pieces in? Might as well, just for fun. What's happened to that thing? Why that's got a weird shape. Oh no! Smoke's coming out of it. What's happened? Yeah, I wonder what happened there. Now there's a lot of smoke coming out of it. So does that mean something got put back wrong? Or shorted together? Still coming out. Yeah, that's disappointing. Oh well, I guess we wrecked that camera that worked. But how? I don't know. It made the right noise when it turned on. Something warm in that area. All the stuff was quite well controlled. Something must have been shorted out. That's the only thing I can think of here. And how would we know without without turning it on again? How would we know what the problem is? So, turn it on again. Although I want to open up this board so we can see. That's where smoke was coming out of. Yeah, I think it's going to be ruined, isn't it? Because, well, if smoke come out of something, then there isn't really any way you can get that back in. Okay, this screws out. Okay, well, let's try it again, I suppose. And watch. I wonder what could have shorted out. Oh yeah, there we go. Smoke's coming out of that thing pretty much straight away, which is the power regulator, I think. If we unplug the camera section, does that stop happening? Nope. Alright, I think it's had it. There's probably no point in putting it back together then. We'll briefly plug it in again, see what... I don't think it's an IC, I think it's a resistor. Yeah, I don't know, there's something down there. There's now a smoke generator. So there you go, that's the end of that. Weirdly though, it's still turned on, didn't it? Oh, that chip is super hot. Oh, no, we're gonna wreck it. Let's just see. Yeah, so it still does the video camera thingies, even though there's smoke coming out of it. Does that mean there's a massive load on something? Yeah, I think it's a motor driver. Okay. Oh well, it was fun while it lasted, and yeah, whatever is going on down there, it's unhappy about it, but I don't know what the cause of that is. If there was something somewhere that got shorted out and that caused the regulator to break. There's nothing around those posts, which is where they were screwing down to. And then the three that hold the camera section on, which go to those three screws there, There's nothing damaged looking there. That can only plug in one way. I don't think there's any way we could have got that in backwards, because it wouldn't go in. And there was that motor driver thing for the zoom. We plugged that back around the right way. Don't know what its problem is. We can see now where it was roasting. It's gone dark there, which is right where we saw the smoke. Was there something touching it? Not that I can see. Okay, well we did what we wanted to do, which was have a look at the difference between M1 and M3, but in the process we got a camera working and then it tried to set fire to itself for no apparent reason. So let's do something else interesting just to finish off. Let's have a look at, let's take this apart completely just for fun, because we saw on the picture it's very green, so there's not really much, doesn't have much value, but I should perhaps keep these screws separate. What I want to do is have a look at the tube part, see what that has to say for itself. That would just come off. There's a little cover. Yeah, there you go. Oh, the tube's released now. A yoke assembly, it says there. That's all just come off. So the target at the front of the tube where the signal comes off connects onto there, and that's soldered. So there's the high voltage connections, and then there's the grids and guns and heaters on there, and then there's the deflection from there, and that's the IR filter. If we pull that off, it's a bit wrecked now. I thought that would just pop off. There you go, it popped off. And so that's the infrared filter there, and there's the front of the tube. Okay, so that's the preamp part of the signal where it comes off the tube through a little inductor, and there's some transistor thingies on the back, probably amplifies it. Another screw there. They were loose. So up here we've got the white balance, and those have got thread locker on them, so you're probably not supposed to undo those. And so that's a white balance detecting thing. I'm wondering if I could get the autofocus thing to operate independently, to perhaps make a security camera lens autofocus, but I think the problem is it needs too much feedback from the lens to transplant the autofocus part into another lens. Assembly off the back of the lens. Oh, long screw. Okay, so this, the neck connector, whatever you call it, that unplugs. Interesting, it's got, oh, I see what that is. It's not a coil. What that is some red LEDs. There's red LEDs that shine into the back of the tube. I have known in the past what the point of that is, because I remember reading about it, but I can't remember exactly what that does at the moment. Something to do with setting things up or compensating for something. There we go, there's the tube. Nuvicon, an S4161P, Matsushita, made in Japan. So that's where the picture gets shined onto, and that metal ring there is where the signal gets picked up. There's a little contact there which touches the ring. And so in there are the deflection coils. There you go, there's the deflection coils in there. That clamp is grounded. Lots of good shielding. There's shielding between the deflection coils. Yeah, so much development and things have gone into making this stuff. Camera board. Yeah, little LEDs. Wow, that's sensitive circuits there. Look at that. So that's some kind of light sensors with coloured filters in front of them for getting the white balance sorted out. Must be the ratio between the yellow and blue light. But look at the routing around the tracks there. There must be a very sensitive or very low level signal coming off that, so they cut an air gap in the board so that their service resistivity of the PCB can't leak the signal between the tracks. That's what I imagine is going on there. And the capacitors are fully had enough of life there. Look at that. All corroded, corroding the tracks and the components. Everything's going fully crusty there. Yeah, it's corroded that little trimmer there and that track. That's fully had enough of life, hasn't it? So that board was quite similar to the one from the M1 camera, but had a few differences, which would have been to do with the auto white balance and autofocus. Well, not the autofocus, because that's autofocus is a completely separate module. It isn't related to the rest of the camera, so it just has that connection there, which I think is just a power signal. That's 3 pins. I'm not sure what the other one is. I'd have to look in the service manual. Perhaps we'll try that out another day, see if we can get that running. But it has inside the lens, and I think you can see there, a thing that gives feedback to the circuit about the positioning of the lens. I think that's all those tracks, all those wires there. The feedback from a binary switch type thing along the lens, so it knows its exact position. I think it's like an absolute encoder. And there's also probably some feedback to a lens in this part here that gets adjusted when as this moves in and out. Something in there probably changes by a small amount to do some compensation. Just what I've seen from taking apart other cameras and seeing how they work. But there's some kind of light sensor thing in there. There you go, that's the lens assembly. And that was an M1 camera until it decided to not be one anymore. I'm not sure if I'm going to bother putting back together the camera now, considering what happened, unless I just keep it as a display piece. That's what I've been doing with hundreds of others that don't work. Yeah, so don't worry, we don't have any shortage of video cameras to look at. I've got hundreds of, well, maybe not hundreds, I've got at least 50 other video cameras that we can take a look at over the next few years, probably. It's going to take a while to get through them all. Yeah, it might be interesting to see if this camera assembly does directly plug into and work on the other camera. Though I don't really want to plug things in now that we've burnt that out. Anyway, there you go. National M1 and M3 VHS movie cameras.